Hi friends, today we're going to talk about Xylazine. Now, if you're not familiar with Xylazine, you're probably not alone. There's lots of people, as I've experienced in my travel lately, that don't know what it is. Well, I've encountered other communities where the impacts of Xylazine are increasing and quite devastating to the community. The purpose of our video today is to help you understand what it is, how to respond to it, the impacts it has on the population being served, and what we need to be thinking through as homelessness and housing support service providers in responding to people who use Xylazine. Of course, when we talk about drug use amongst people experiencing homelessness, it can fit into a stereotype that everybody who uses homelessness uses drugs, or that everybody who is experiencing homelessness has a substance use disorder. I want to be really clear on this. I am not suggesting that Xylazine is widespread in its use yet, nor am I suggesting that the majority of people experiencing homelessness have an addiction or dependency on a substance. What I am saying is that for those who do use drugs, it is increasing in its impact. So Xylazine is frequently called tranq, or when it's mixed with fentanyl, tranq dope. It's a veterinary tranquilizer, and it's not a controlled substance, but it is approved by the FDA in the United States for use in veterinary medicine. Now, the reason why Xylazine is often mixed with opioids, especially fentanyl, is it's said to both mimic the experience of fentanyl and prolong the high of fentanyl, according to the anecdotes I've heard from service users and from people in the addiction medicine field. But there's still a lot more research that needs to be done on Xylazine. All right, let's talk about what Xylazine does to the body. So it slows down breathing, and when the respiration slows down, it can get to dangerously low levels to the point where people stop breathing altogether. We also will see people experience significant drowsiness. It may not be responsive immediately to touch in their drowsiness. And we can also see that people will have low heart rates when they use Xylazine. Perhaps just as troubling as the possibility of distressed respiratory system is the fact that people who smoke, inject, swallow, or inhale Xylazine are at risk of all sorts of skin issues. It doesn't seem to be limited exclusively to people who inject Xylazine, at least according to the information and research I've been able to do thus far. These skin ulcers lead to all sorts of rotting tissue, as well as huge abscesses, especially on the limbs. This is resulting in high degrees of amputation, unlike anything we've seen before in the sector. I want you to think about the number of people with mobility issues now, and imagine how much more difficult it'll become if we see an increase in amputations, especially on lower extremities. Are all of your homeless services and housing opportunities in your community really well designed for people in wheelchairs? I suspect not, or I suspect you already struggle with the volume of people who use mobility assistance devices, whether they be wheelchairs or walkers. How can we help people who are using Xylazine who may not even know they're using Xylazine? Well, the first would be to increase checking of drugs and the availability of test strips to know whether or not there's Xylazine in the supply. It is also going to be really helpful if we see public health and other organizations testing the drug supply to be able to put out public warnings when there is an increase in Xylazine mixed in with fentanyl and other substances in the community. So what should you do if you expect a Xylazine overdose? Well, because tranq, or Xylazine, is not an opioid, it doesn't respond to naloxone. So you can administer naloxone all you want. If it was just Xylazine that is causing the overdose, it's not going to have an impact. But because Xylazine is most frequently mixed with fentanyl, the best advice that seems to be out there right now is to continue to administer naloxone and hope that the primary reason for respiratory distress is a result of the use of fentanyl. So what does this all mean for the homelessness response sector? A few things. One, we need to be supportive of people who may be using Xylazine and continue to help people both reduce harm and consider treatment and recovery options relative to their substance use. Providing safe come-down spaces, making sure that there's readily available information when there is a new notice put out by law enforcement or public health officials relative to xylazine and the street supply of drugs. Be really helpful. We also should continue to use other harm reduction methods, such as needle exchanges when people are injecting substances, so that we can decrease disease transmission like HIV and hepatitis. Also, as a homelessness and housing support sector, we should appreciate that more people are going to die as a result of xylazine. This has huge impacts on the workforce as well as other people experiencing homelessness and using your services. So consider what sort of counseling and support you can provide to those people who are impacted by loss of life. And lastly, continue to work with health services, doctors, and addiction medicine in your community. We need to do more detection, and we also need to have a better understanding exactly of the impacts of xylazine and where it is moving throughout the country. Thank you for watching.